Okay, my friends, I cannot help myself. I am excited. I have had a dilemma, a conundrum, an issue that I could not resolve. And that I don't like. I don't like to have something that, I have a theory, and then there's something in that theory I can't explain. That I don't like. I like to be able to explain everything. And thank God for Greg Morrison, who got a hold of me this morning and made a couple of statements about the salt. And I think he was exactly correct. And I'm going to tell you, we're going to get into it a little deeper in a second. But look, as you know, I claim that there is nothing but biology. And then when I look at these salt mines, like the Himalayan salt mine, and this is Himalayan salt right there. And this is barbecue rib, or some kind of rib. And this is the salt mines, and it's not just this one. They're all over the place. This is a salt mine too, and this is layers of body tissue. This is what I claim, and I'm saying to myself, where did all this salt come from? How did this salt get here? And it's playing on my mind literally for years, and I'm trying to work it out. There's no chemistry in the body that's going to do that. There's just too much salt. So again, I'm stuck. And again, Greg gave me the information I needed to resolve this issue. Now, again, this is salt mines. This is also a salt mine. Look at this. Now, there's all kinds of history on salt mines, and there's also stories about the people that hid in the salt mines during the World War II and so forth. And there's also other ones that talk about the people that work inside these salt mines. What effect does that have on them? So again, this is all mud fossil related stuff. That's what I do as a mud fossils. And I have to resolve every issue that I come up against. And so far, this one has been the one that plagued me worst. Like I say, I don't know if I mentioned about the silicon. The silicon is in the skin. It's 50 times more than the rest of your body. So the silicon boiled off because it was a hot water flood. And that's also written about in the ancient text from Velikovsky. And I also found it in some text from the Colburn Bible, and it's what they call a non-secular or a secular text, whatever. It's not really religiously affiliated, but there's a lot about Jesus in there and all that stuff, and basically everybody had almost the same story, but you can write it from different perspectives, from the Jewish side, from the Christian side, from the pagans. Everybody had their own take on things. But when it all boiled down to it, I have to see that Jesus was the guy that came down to be everybody's guy. All right, so I don't care who they were. If they knew about Jesus, he was their guy. Even in the Quran, they recognize Jesus. I believe, if I'm wrong, somebody Muslim tell me, but he was a prophet, and he was well respected, but he was not a god. He was considered another guy. That's my take. Could be wrong, but my work today is going to be on the salt and benefits of salt, in addition to how the salt became incorporated in these body tissues. What was that process? How could that possibly have occurred? And it gets to be a little bit of a complicated story, but it's very easy to understand. It's just that there's a number of steps we have to take to get back to how everything started to cause this event, that caused this catastrophe, that caused this salt invasion. All right, so let's get started. All right, you know that I have giant human beings, and they're DNA tested, and they were pretty good size. Now, these are dragons. And these are dragon creatures, appear in virtually all cultures around the globe. The earliest attested reports of these dragon creatures resemble giant snakes, not just snakes, giant snakes and dragons. And I've shown you them. I don't feel there's any question whatsoever. So these things existed, as it was written in the ancient text, and I refer to Hesiod and Apollodorus. Apollodorus is the one you want to read. It'll blow your mind, and you would laugh hysterically if you didn't understand some of the things that were written are absolutely true about Typhon in the desert and how his throat was cut by the great and feared god Jupiter, who was Zeus. And all of that stuff in the Bible, it sort of glosses over here and there about the angels coming down to have sex with the women who they rebelled against God. Well, who was in charge of the earth? If God was in charge, he'd just wipe them off and that'd be the end of it. No, this was a battle. This was a battle. Zeus, it appears, was that god that said, let's go down and have sex with all the women. Because they could transform themselves into anything they wanted. Read Ovid, O-V-I-D. It's called Metamorphosis. And the first thing he brings up, he says, they could change themselves into mushrooms or plants or rivers or mountains or trees or animals, anything they wanted. They could change one sex to the other sex. They were in control of matter, which they are nothing more than matter, as we are nothing more than matter. We can't change it. We can't make 6 fingers grow like that. They could do anything they want. So he was coming down making himself look like a real handsome god to have sex with all these really hot looking chicks. And he did. He covered them all. So as far as I'm concerned, he was considered the god of gods, because there was more than him. They were still considered gods and men of old, men of renown. But he was the top. And he was the feared god Jupiter. And he was also Zeus to the Greeks. One way or the other. Anyway, he was Zeus, also known as Jupiter. Let's go with that. Now, we got dragons all over the earth, everywhere. And they're just laying on top of the earth. They're not buried hundreds of miles deep in the earth. You got to dig them up. So this didn't all happen that long ago. And that is also written about from Velikovsky. I'm going to refer to Velikovsky's work a lot because he talks about a boiling hot water flood. Now, probably all the oceans didn't boil, but it appears there's going to be areas that did boil, and they would be like the valley areas where there was little lakes and so forth. Those would probably boil, and rivers and so forth, because it was just an absolutely unbelievable impact of Venus against our atmosphere. And then Venus continued on and actually hit Mars, destroyed it. Just destroyed it. And that also proves my electron flood theory. This stuff weaves together like unbelievable, because Venus was so hot, it had so much extra energy, which is nothing more than electricity. When it hit Mars, it just discharged, and you can see all over, it gouged Mars, and you can see all discharges coming from Venus that ended up putting a big deep gouge in Mars. One way or the other, Venus discharged, Mars discharged to Venus, or Venus discharged to Mars. I'm not sure which. But you can see, obviously, there was a gouge, and Venus had the discharge marks. All right, let's just go with this. Everywhere on the earth, they were talking about dragons. I've shown dragons, several of them at least. Now, these creatures appear virtually in all cultures around the globe. We never had even any clue how big they were. As I showed you, they're just absolutely enormous. And I cannot account for how big they are on this planet the way it is now. But the way it is now is the way it is now. You can see it from the space station. We can go up, and we've gone to Mars. Please don't do that on my channel. They're saying that the earth is flat and all that stuff. It makes... I'm not going to allow it. Let me just put it that way. I don't want to insult anybody. If you feel that way, that's fine. Just don't do it here. This is research that is provable and obvious, and it takes away, and it's really caused a lot of problems for my research. So please, all right, I just want to warn you, don't do it here. Now, dragons everywhere. Yes, that I can show. I can prove that. There's no question. That's real. All right, in the space station, there's no question that's real either. So anyway, and a globe is obviously real. All you got to do is look from the space station, which is real. Now, we all know that every single culture on Earth has stories about giants as well as dragons. Every single one, 100%. And they were everywhere. They were everywhere. And I have them here on my own property, and one of them I have would have measured out to be approximately 160 feet, maybe 180 feet tall. And it's got a 3-foot long fingertip. And it still had the grip skin on it, and it's been DNA tested. So it is what it is, and now we have to start taking a look at it. Now, don't forget, we're going back to the salt. I know I ramble on and go here and there, but you have to understand we were almost hit by Venus, and that impact caused so much heat and compression to the atmosphere that it not only compressed the hydrogen and oxygen, which compression of hydrogen and oxygen forms water. Now, in addition, it would be so hot, the two impact of these fields coming together, and it glanced off us, but when it did, it created all kinds of havoc, and apparently the Earth stood still for a day by hitting our atmosphere, which was spinning this way, and came in, boom, and it just sort of kept it from going. That's the way I take it. Now, in addition, it heated up everything as it approached. All right, let me just show you something. Here's what happened. All right, let me get set up. Hold on. All right. In the ancient text, it said the feared god Jupiter, the planet Zeus, gave birth to the fiery comet, which later turned out to be Venus. And we're spinning, let's say let's just go with spinning this way, because it's going to make it easier. We're spinning this way. This comes at us and hits our atmosphere, and instead of us spinning, it sort of pushes against the atmosphere and keeps us from spinning. And the only reason it's spinning because we're scrubbing through space, and it's forcing our atmosphere to make the planet spin. And that's why it spun back up again. It just didn't, because we're going through the atmosphere in space, swinging around, and it's going to be pushing and forcing this Earth to spin. But at this point, it pushed back against our atmosphere. Normally, the atmosphere is out here, and we're swinging this way. It's going to push and spin the planet, let's say. This, which would be spinning this way, this hits it and pushes it back. And they say the Earth stood still for a day. And this is exactly the time frame. And this is all about these biblical texts. And this is very, very deep, and deeper. So now, what would also happen? It would compress our atmosphere. All this atmosphere would compress. And now it's like a lot of hydrogen and oxygen and all that stuff. Well, when you push those together, H2O, and it becomes water. And because it's so hot, this impact, it would come down probably boiling. But in the meantime, this fiery comet, Venus, would be shining its light on us stronger than the sun, coming direct at us. And apparently it took 7 days. That's my interpretation. 7 days it took to approach Earth, and it could get brighter and brighter and brighter, and people were jumping into rivers to try to stay from burning up, and of course they ended up getting boiled up. And that's what caused mud. That's mud. That's why things disassociated. Look at this. Hold on. All right, you see this? That's a lung. And it was in a person's body. This is a human lung. And I had it DNA tested, so it's not questioned. And it's flat as a pancake because of the flood. Now, how did that get completely away from the rest of the body, just laying around as a lung? Well, there's something called fascia, and that's this. It's a coating of it's like a membrane. Let's just think of it as a membrane. And that membrane ended up, because of the chemistry of it, it turned into silicates. And it sealed the contents, but only the membranes. The contents of them, they're still wet and leaking blood and everything else. I've got them with all that stuff going on. But this was a DNA tested, and it was from the Great Flood. And all of my stuff here, basically everything was, and it was all on the surface of the Earth. So it didn't happen all that long ago. And these creatures were absolutely stunningly large. That's a hair follicle. That's where the muscle attaches. That's the sebaceous gland. That's the hair shaft. There's the hair follicle. That's the vein and artery at the bottom, and that's the root. Comes straight up. All you got to do is look it up. Look up hair follicle, and then think about what you're looking at here. The erector pili muscle goes here. Sebaceous gland, hair shaft, and that's it right there. Now, and that's a pretty good size hair follicle. That guy's got to be pretty good size. Probably even almost fully grown. Now, there's something else about salt. This is a salt inhaler, and I use this, and it clears your lungs. And they have salt rooms. We're going to get into all of this stuff, and then there's all kinds of different salts. You see all these different salts? Look at all this: Himalayan, pink Himalayan, Cypress, Danish, Hawaiian red and black. Red and black is the colors of blood. So, and you could see the other stuff. The Himalayan is just nothing more than spare ribs. Okay, this is, to me, is very, very conclusive. This is Venus. Now, if you look at Venus and you see all of this stuff, those are not just rivers running off. That is like basically an impact electrical discharge site. All right, you see all these little electrical discharge lines? That's basically what you would see from an arc welder. If you took an arc welder and went just like that, it would create that kind of a pattern. Now, that appears to me to have caused an impact into Mars. And this was claimed by the ancient text that this Venus actually impacted and killed Mars, who was the god of war. And I'm telling you, these things were gods. I don't care what anybody says now. If you read Apollodorus 1.6.3, all right, Apollodorus 1.6.3, and then go look in North Africa at Typhon, that's him. And he's attacking a fish. And it said when this event occurred, the gods were so scared they turned themselves into animals. And apparently the fish didn't get away. Now, this is the impact on Mars. You see that? Now, could a field come down and hit that, and just the electrical field cause this? Maybe. Because you see that little extra charge here and this thing over here? I could see that being an electrical field and then just digging in solid. And otherwise, if it was going to be just one gouge, you'd see a gouge here. You wouldn't see that ridge. And you wouldn't see a ridge in the middle here. I think this is electrical discharge. I could be wrong, but I can tell you what, that's wider than the United States, and I think it's like 5 miles deep. It may even be more than that. I don't know. But that is not your normal average geological feature. And at the same time, it was wiped into, no atmosphere was left. No moisture, no water. It killed literally everything on the planet. Everything was dead. And now they have found the ancient riverbeds. I'll show you that article in a second. It just came out, I think, yesterday. And I have found all the other evidence that supports that this is basically identical to what Earth was like, identical. And so anyway, this is the impact site, and this was also written in the ancient text. After Venus almost hit us, it's whacked into Mars and killed it. And that's why it's the red planet, because there literally is blood everywhere. All right, here's the deal. This is what happened to Mars. As I claim, all of the atmosphere, all of the moisture, everything, when that discharge happened and it just slammed everything off and killed all the creatures on Mars, because that was a dead impact. We got a glancing blow, so we at least didn't everything get killed. Now, this is about this Mars crater filling alluvial strata. This is about water on Mars, all right? Because at one time, now they're admitting, plain language summary. Well, it's about time. Ancient river deposits exist, all right? This is a statement. Ancient river deposits exist across Mars and can be identified in satellite data by erosional landforms called fluvial ridges. And then they go on to throw in a bunch of other hyperbole. What it just boils down to is, let me just show you the pictures. Okay, I believe I showed you about the gouge and the electrical discharge. To me, shows that there was an impact, and that's what Velikovsky claimed. And he also claimed that the ancient text said that Venus was born from the feared god Jupiter, and I believe that is true. And I believe the red spot is literally a birth canal. And let's take a look at some more stuff that I can show you here. This is what it would look like to be born from that spot. It's just exactly the way it would look. And it is in the process right now of undergoing some changes. All right, this is the red spot. It was originally oval. And now this is what it looks like back in 2019. And this is only over the course of a half a dozen days or so. Big slabs of red stuff came off. Big slabs, they said. And they thought it was going to fall apart. They thought this is the end of the red spot. Well, no. It stayed like this. And I believe it is that configuration today, which looks like a cervix to me. And this, my friends, looks like a vagina to me. And I'm going to show anatomically, so if you don't want to see, just don't watch. All right, like I said, this is literally a vagina. And this was the shape, which they normally are, until they get ready to give birth, and then the cervix in there expands to a nice round dome. Now, at this point, it was just a vagina. Now, what can I show you about this that will convince you? First of all, there's the cavity. These are the vaginal ripples in here. These are not swirling clouds to speak of. There might be a little bit of that, but it's primarily the reason it looks like a red spot is the dust has to work its way around here, and it swirls around there, and I'll show you that in a minute. But this is what I can show you to make it almost absolutely certain. You see that little spot right there? Look at this very carefully. You see there's a strap and a tag. All right? This is literally the hairline. I'm telling you, this is absolutely identical to a human vagina. And it comes around here just exactly what you're going to see in the real thing. All right, and these are all the vaginal ripples in here, and there's all kind of different names for it. I'm not going to get too involved in that, but this is literally a birth canal. Now, here it goes. I'm going to show you the human vagina. All right. Now, you see that little tag right there? That's the tag I showed you at the other one on Mars. On Jupiter. And here's where the hairline comes right around there. It seams right into that. Exactly identical. And there's all that stuff at the top, the extra skin, the clitoris or clitoris, however you want to pronounce it. And that is basically, don't forget, that's the tag right there. And that little strap, I don't know if you can see that or not. All right, so don't forget, these gods could change themselves into anything they wanted. They could change their sex, they could change into humans, they could change into ants and fungus and mushrooms and rivers and constellations, anything they wanted. They controlled matter. And Zeus, who was Jupiter, used to come down to Earth, down to Mount Olympus, and then go out and have sex with all the women. That's what he did. He was the guy that did that. He was the god of this region, and that's the one that went against the big god that said, go down and take care of these people. Instead, he came down to have a party, and that's what happened. Now, this is the great red spot, and again, it's a vagina. It's his vagina, and it is now changing. And wait till you see this. I'm pretty blown away. I didn't realize they had a video on this. Okay, this is not a storm. This is a mound. It's called the Venus Mons. It's the same thing in a woman. It's right above the vagina. There's a mound there. It's called the Venus Mons. And that's it right there. And as the planet turns, it's got to push its way through these clouds. They're just swirling off of here. That's not a storm. That's just it's got to plow its way through. Now, listen to this. This is Hubble observers observes Jupiter's great red spot changing. This is only within the last couple of years. All right, so don't forget now, it looked to me like, well, I know it's changing, and they're admitting it's changing. Let's see what they have to say about it. It's only 2 minutes and 20 seconds long. All right, here we go. Jupiter's most iconic feature, giant storm known as the Great Red Spot. That's not a storm. The planet is moving this way, the clouds hit, and they have to come around. This is a mound. All right, 1800s, astronomers observed the storm many times, but no one knows when it began. For more than a century, astronomers noted it shrinking in size and becoming more circular than oval. All right, in 1990, they gave them even clearer annual views of Jupiter. All right, now, you see what's happening? The atmosphere, either the red spot is moving this way or the planet is moving that. The stuff is circling around it because it has to push through it. It's not that it's a storm. All right, the winds on the outermost edge of the storm have increased by up to 8% from 2009 to 2020. They would only increase if the mound got bigger and bigger. You see, it's so obvious. The planet is going this way, I believe. And this is just basically almost like that. But it's hitting this bump, and it has to swirl off. That's what's causing that. In the innermost, we're going significantly slower. They're hardly moving at all, basically, because it's the other outside is what's rubbing and making it scrub away. So the inside, in contrast, the winds near the storm's innermost region are moving significantly slower. That means almost not moving. All right, so now this is the changes. All right, they're monitoring its increasing speeds. The reason it increases is mounding up. Well, mounding up to me means getting ready to give birth. Now look at how quick it's moving now. Wait till you see this. While the increase is a mystery, here's 2009, 2014. All right, the important data helps us understand what powers the Great Red Spot and how it maintains energy. It's not even maintaining any energy, it's a mound. They should be able to figure this out. There's a mound around the edge, and then there's a birth canal in the center. They think, here's what I can tell you, well, I know what they're thinking. They're thinking this vortex is spinning by itself, creating the effect of a mound, but it's not that way. It is a mound creating a vortex as it passes through the clouds that are in front of it. See, realize, this is perfect. What's going on here is this layer here has to compact to get around this mound. It's going around it, and then it just swirls off like this. There's almost no movement in the center. It's all on the winds of the outside, and they're wind. It's just wind because it has to. It's just like condensing the layer here, because it is a layer, and you can see it's just crushing it. So the planet is moving this way, and the layer has to go through it. So that's why they have these big bands. The cloud, to me, the clouds are not really held tightly to the core. to the surface, and it's sort of moving under it, and that's why this would have to move against these and create that pattern. It's a little bit different than it is here on Earth, but this is like, I think, hundreds of times, many hundreds of times bigger than Earth, and this Earth could come right out of that exactly. It's perfectly designed for Earth size, which is basically the same as Venus. So let's just keep going. All right, you see it? All right, there's us. All right, we'll understand more about the atmospheres of other planets, including our own, if they would take a look at what I'm presenting. This is very hard to deny what I'm showing. And the ancient texts report very, very exactly the story that Jupiter gave birth to the fiery comet Venus. And it looks like it's going to happen again to me. I can't, who knows? Some to consider. Okay, this is Penn State University, and they are showing erosion on Mars. And they claim, yes, there's no question, it was a lot of waterways on Mars at one point in time. What happened to it? Why is it gone? Why is there no atmosphere? Why is that gigantic gouge in Mars? Why is it? I can show you these features that they're going to have to explain. They understand now that this was a watery planet just like ours, but why would it just all of a sudden go away? That doesn't make sense. Okay, at one point there was no water ever on Mars. We couldn't figure it out. Well, at this point, I think everybody agrees, yes. There's nobody I know of now that doesn't agree. And this is from the European Space Agency saying the planet showed signs where flowing wind, water, and ice once moved material from place to place, carving out distinctive patterns and landforms as it did so. And yes, there's no question it was a watery planet at one time, until the impact, and then everything was torn off its surface, basically. All right, don't forget, this is the clitoris, which is that flap of skin up there, which you can see in the Jupiter one, and of course the hairline, and that tag and that little strap coming down. That's what holds the vagina really from moving around. That's the investment into your body, and every single body part basically has one of these tags. And of course there's the vaginal canal. See, there's the clitoris right there. That's that flap of skin or tissue. And this down here at the very bottom is, let me just hone right in on that so you can see that for sure. That is that little strap. It's 100% certain for that. Look at it. You can't miss it. You can't miss it. You see the little strap that's there, and it just bolts right in there. It's just, you just bolt it right in. That's it. Life is just something, isn't it? Look at that. Now it's gone round, and that's exactly what happens when they give birth. And I'm telling you, as they just showed in the video, I think I just showed you that. It's changing quick. All right, just to make sure you understand, this is the university, Penn State University, and they're saying from the Curiosity rover, which I didn't work with it, but I followed that thing since day one, and that's 10 years ago almost. I think it was 2014 that first got up there, and the stuff which I will be showing you is just fabulous. And they're finding evidence that Mars is likely a planet of rivers, just like ours is, said Benjamin Cardenas, assistant professor of geosciences at Penn State, lead author on a new paper announcing the discovery. We see signs of this all over the planet. That's the name. Now, I did contact him, and he contacted me back. I'm kind of interested to see where this goes, because I'll show you what my evidence is for what's going on Mars, and then hopefully if he'll engage. The problem is when you tell somebody it's about Velikovsky's, work about Venus almost hitting Earth. They just turn right off. But maybe it'll be different. Let's see. I sent them the pictures of stuff, and it's kind of hard to miss. All right, so they conclude with this statement. They say the European Space Agency Mars Express was launched in 2003. That's 20 years ago. So, as well as producing striking views of the Martian surface, such as the ones we saw, the mission has shed light on many of the planet's biggest mysteries. Well, not the kind of light I'm shining. And helped to build the picture of Mars as the planet that was once warmer, wetter, potentially habitable. Yeah, until it got whacked by Venus. Read more about the past 15 years of Mars Express and what the mission has discovered so far. Well, read what I've discovered and let's compare. All right, like I said, this is a tangled web, because in order for you to believe the things that I'm saying about this, us almost getting hit by Venus, I have to prove about Mars, because that was the second target. It hit Mars, and it just scraped right across Mars, and that's Venus's electrical discharge, I believe. Now, I showed you about the Great Red Spot giving birth to Venus. Venus almost killing us and then hitting Mars. Venus's red spot is changing very, very fast. This was only a matter of like 6 days. It gave off all this red blood, and it popped right up like a little bubble there. And that's, I don't know if there's any gynecologists in the audience here, but I believe that's the sign of birthing. Now, of course, it is exactly the same size as Earth and Venus, is the red spot. And that Venus Mons is this bump right here. That's the Venus Mons, and the wind has to come around it. It's still going to be bumped up like this. The wind has to come around it, and it's just spinning like crazy as it goes past. All right, so now, what didn't I show you? Here's what I didn't show you, is that this is what's called the Mars Morse code. And you say, well, what the hell is that? And this is how I can tell you 100% certain that this is from Mars. This is interstitium. And you say, well, what is interstitium? Well, I'll show you in a second. But what I want you to see is how finely dusted this is. There is no erosion here. There's no water has run off of here. This has been dusted off by sandblasting. And this is gathered interstitium, and that's gathered interstitium. This is just relaxed, and this is stretched. Every one of these has a little strap attached to it, and it can stretch. You see them stretching? The ball is locked in solid to the body, and the ball can stretch, and then it will come back. That's why eventually this stuff will come back into here, because the straps will bring it back. That's what interstitium is. It's a fabric that surrounds your body, so your body can move and stretch and pull and gather and all that, and then it comes back to wherever these balls were attached, and the straps recoil just like this. All right, gathered, stretched. All right, this is eroded so much that all that's left is the Mars blueberries. These are these balls. And they're all over the planet. They call them Mars blueberries, and they don't understand them. They're like almost like metal balls. I'll show you them, and you'll see they're blue, and they're little berries. All they are is the interstitium balls that have lost their straps. You see that? Those are the Mars blueberries. You can look all this stuff up. These have eroded so much that all that's left is the ball. This layer here is the basement layer of skin. And this was under the skin, and then there was skin above it and the fleshy stuff along with the balls, and it would stretch and do all that when the thing was alive. And then when it died, it was probably a cataclysm similar to what it was on Earth. I imagine there was a ton of water moving and all that stuff, and it just eventually exploded into space. I don't know, maybe it happened instantaneously. Everything went instantaneously, or did it take a little while to go? I have no idea. But it's not there now. There is virtually no water on the surface. Now, they claim that, yes, there is water down deep, and I don't see any reason there wouldn't be. So I've shown you the Mars blueberries and the Mars Morse code, and here's what it looks like here on Earth. All right? These are the Moki marbles, identical. There's no difference whatsoever. Zero difference. Right? There is no difference. These are the Moki marble blueberries. No, they call them Moki marbles. But they're all over the place. Utah, Arizona, out in that area. Now, what is this? It's the same as this, only it's being eroded by the ocean over the United Kingdom, Huntington Cliffs or Beach or something. And these balls are the same as these balls, only they're a little bigger. And this mud is only here because this flesh has eroded away, creating that mud. Mud is eroded red flesh. If it's red clay, that's mud. It's a red flesh. Now, above it is the skin layer. This is, I'm telling you, the things, like I'm saying, these planets were living creatures at one time. All right, I'm going with the ancient myths at this point, that these were gods and they were planets and they were alive, and and even Jesus Christ said, when you discover the earth, you're going to find out it's a corpse. And you can see that in the Gospel of Thomas, who was doubting Thomas, his scribe, wrote that down, and I think it's number 50 talks about the light, and that's we are also light, and I think it's 56, I think it is, or 80, one or the other. If you look it up, you'll see. Now, this is the Mars Morse code. That's all that is, laying sideways, flat like this. And some of it's stretched and gathered, some of it's stretched, and some of it's gathered. All right? And these are the little balls, and look how small they are. This is actual body picture. Look at how small those balls are. All right, and every one of them has a little strap. And this is really what they look like. This is what they look like when you get right down into them. And you can see, you really can't see in these pictures. You really can't see it because I don't know why, to be honest with you. I would expect you could see them, but you can't. This is what they look like. And that's quite obvious when you look at the Mars Morse code. And again, there is no erosion here, no erosion. And that means to me, this is absolutely 100% on Mars, no question whatsoever, because you would have erosion. On Earth, there is no place that hasn't been hit by water. And if you just got hit by water, it wouldn't look anything like this. All right, so anyway, that's that. Now, what else can I show you? Now we'll get into the Mars crab. All right, here it is right here. And you're going to say, oh, what is that? I say, well, it's not a crab. This right here is a vein. And a vein brings blood back up to the heart, and it doesn't have all these little blood vessels sticking out of it. This is an artery, and it's supplying blood for these tissues right here, which is down here. You see it? This is it, what it looks like. This is a blow up so we can see it. Down here is that crab. All right? Which obviously is not a crab. Now, you see this runoff here? Oh, that's just dust off. It's just because there's no rain or any water to make it little rivulets or anything like that. It's just dusting off all of this body tissue. And this is body tissue. And you know what it is? These are what's called sarcomeres. Each block of here is a sarcomere. Wow, each block here is a sarcomere. And they all need a lot of blood. Sarcomeres use a ton of blood. When you're doing exercises and work, you got to be flushed with blood in there, and that's why you get red and everything else as you do work. And this is the connective tissue. The reason these little layers are here is because those are the tough fibers that your body pulls against. These cracks are in between. Every one of them is in a block. They're in blocks everywhere. And in between the block, there's glue. So you can rip your muscle, and what you'll end up doing is ripping a glue spot here, basically. Now, these interact with each other. They pull in like this. So there's going to be a dark side and a light-looking side. But when they're all eroded like this, you really can't tell the difference. All you see is the connective tissue. All right, so don't forget, these are the sarcomeres, and they're divided up into blocks, and they pull this way. And I'm going to show you exactly what they are. This is what they look like anatomically, and this is actually a slide of what they look like. And they can slide off sideways, and they pinch this way, and these are the breaks, and these are all these little fibers are those connective tissues, and the reddy stuff here is how they can pull together. When they're pulled together, they look like this. When they're relaxed, they look like this. All right, and this is what they look like in an actual rock. You see that? Those are sarcomeres. Each one of those is a block. And if it was up on Mars, it would have eroded away. And that red stuff is blood. It has to be flushed with blood. And that's what that artery did, was brought the blood to saturate the sarcomeres. Otherwise, you can't do, your muscles will fatigue and you will become cramped and painfully injured. Now, as I showed you, that is muscle. All right, so that's muscle. This also is muscle. All right, from here to here is muscle. And you say, "Oh, Roger, what about this? Isn't that muscle?" I said, "No, it is not muscle." And thank you for asking, though. Now, what else can I show you here on this? This is tendon. You see the different color from here to here? You see the red blood? That's nothing more than a Mars crab. You see that little tube? That's nothing more than an artery, exactly like the Mars crab. Only all of my blood has run out and eroded away because we got water here. There, the little tubes are just sticking out because those are the blood vessels. And here it's just saturated with blood up here because you need a lot of blood. Now, this is all the muscle fibers. And if you look carefully, you see out here, they break in what I call abrupt transitions. You see, and you can see the little green here. Red blood makes moss grow fabulously. And they just, you know, because this has a tiny little taste of red blood still left in it. Now, that's another abrupt transition. They go mineralized, less mineralized. You see it out to here, and then out at the end, it turns into regular muscle. But these are the abrupt transitions, and I think there's 3 or 4 of them. Now, this is the tendon. And the tendon attaches to the muscle. If anybody's been following me, they should have a pretty good grasp of anatomy now. A tendon attaches to a bone, primarily. And then the tendon attaches to the muscle. The muscle can contract and pull the bone here and do this and so forth. You know, all these things. These are all muscles and tendons. And every single muscle has a tendon on both sides of it. All right, so you can't rip it out. All right, these flex a little tiny bit. They don't need hardly any nutrition at all. That's why there's no red blood there. Everything's red over here. There's nothing here. Now, this spot right here, you see that? This one right here in the center, that's the main tag. It goes all the way in here. And then there's like gooey stuff here. And here's the reason why. You have to move your body like this. All right, these have to be able to slide back and forth against each other. But not only that, this has to be able to turn into that goo. All right, you can't just have it flat against a plate here. You have to be able to swivel this. And it swivels right on this pin right here. And this is the tough spot. I'm going to show you a bigger shot of something like this. But don't forget, this has to be able to spin like this and over this way and over that way. And it spins on that spot, and it's glued here, so it can go gloop into that way and gloop into this way, the gooey. So you can see they're almost like spongy looking stuff. Now, I'm going to show you a different shot of this with the bone still attached. Hold on. But don't forget, these were all these sarcomeres would be. And this is nothing but tendon, totally different. This is, tendon is totally different. It's CaCO3, calcium carbonates primarily it turns into. These turn into red clays and, you know, the sarcomeres. Okay, this time, this was the original picture I showed you. And that shows this tendon piece, which is right here. This is shadowed so you can't see it well. But you can see the pin. That's the pin that I'm talking about right up here. All right, and it literally bolts into something that hooks it into this bone structure. I don't know, that I really can't tell you. But I can tell you what, this is basically the pin that is right there. You see that round pin? Take your time and, you know, pay attention. See this come up here? That round pin coming back? That's this round pin right here. So this is where the anchor of this muscle and tendon assembly is. And I don't know what, the shoulder must move this way or that way. I don't know. It's anatomy is very interesting, but this is that, which is this. But we can see, obviously, that's where the bone was. All right, you can go back over this 2, 3, 4, 5 times if you want, but you can't miss this. I'm showing you the Mars Morse code, which is nothing more than the interstitium, which I showed you over here. I showed you the Mars crab, which is nothing more than the artery and the vein, and identical to what I have here in my shop. Only there's no moisture up there. There's nothing to erode it. All right, and this is, of course, the one that's in my shop here. And these are the sarcomeres that are these sarcomeres, and these are fleshed out ones that didn't erode out, and it got cut from a rock, and this is sarcomeres. And here's where all the blood is, and you need a ton of blood. I think I've gone over this a couple of times, but you know, what can I say? People don't listen. So anyway, there's the Mars deal, and that's looking like it's changing pretty damn quick to me, and that could be the end result, and that would not be good. I don't know. Maybe it would be good. Who knows? This I showed you is Mars. That's the scar. This is longer than the United States, and that I believe was the electrical discharge from Venus. We started out talking about salt. And I was so pumped up about the fact that now I understand the salt and why things turn to salt, like this Himalayan pink salt. It's the same thing as some kind of rib connective tissue and ribs or something. But it's not obviously quite biological. I mean, you really got to not understand how to even look if you can't see this stuff. But I got the chemistry, we got all the different types of salts. Every place has its own type of salt. It depends on what the creature was and what the conditions that it died in. And what happened was, the key that Greg tipped me off to, he says, just think about this, the whole ocean would be sloshing around. And there'd be a lot of salt water. I can't remember how he worded it, actually. Hold on a second. Okay, this is what he said. He said he was watching how they had submersibles way down at the bottom of the ocean and how it was super saline, which means saturated with salt. So I started looking up how dense it is and so forth, and it's very dense, and it's at the very bottom of the ocean. So you've got like semi-salty water up at the top, but at the bottom it's just flush with salt. Now, what will happen when the Earth gets wrenched by Venus, which I showed you? I'm very, very well convinced that we were the first target, and we didn't get whacked like Jupiter did, like Mars did. But our outside atmosphere was just really smashed. And as a matter of fact, in some of the ancient texts, I believe Velikovsky reported this, or one of them did, they said that after this event occurred, they couldn't even start fires. There wasn't enough oxygen, because the hydrogen and oxygen would have combined together to make an enormous amount of water, and then it's no longer oxygen. So then the plants would have had to turn that back into oxygen, or whatever happened after that, mold, slime, red rain. I don't know what's going to happen after that, but eventually we're back to oxygen levels. Now, I showed you these things here. So what would have happened with this extremely dense salt? It would have washed all over the Earth. Well, there's going to be valleys and whole areas where it could have been just in the right spot to get a whole ton of that extremely salty water and put it in there, and it just stayed there. Because first of all, it's denser than all the other water. So once you put it in there, it's not going to come back out. The other freshwater-ish stuff will be above it. It's dense. Dense means if it drops down. So if you put a bucket of that heavy-duty water in there, that's it. It's going to go to the bottom. So these must have been in areas where they were able to saturate, because let me show you something about preservation and salts. But there's not too much to go over. If you want to look into salt preservation, because salt will preserve food, primarily meats and so forth, as water is removed from the cells of the meat, the salt takes its place. All right, there you go. That's where the salt came from. It just invades, and if there's no way for it to get out of there, it eventually replaces whatever water was in there. And you're made of almost everything is water almost. I mean, you're a ton of water. So if this replaces it with salt, that's how it got there. But in addition to just salt, which is the NaCl, there's all kinds of other minerals. Let me show you this. All right, table salt, regular white salt, they just wash everything out. It ends up with 3.03% calcium, 0.09% potassium, 0.01 or less magnesium, iron, sodium. Now, what about the real salts? Let's just go with Himalayan. 16% calcium. That means it's got some bone parts in it. 28% potassium. That's in close to the salty area. Magnesium, you got not much magnesium, but magnesium is in your blood. Iron, you got a significant amount of iron. Celtic salt has a lot of iron. And then sodium, that range is pretty much similar to all of them. Sodium in a table salt is a little higher, but this is the signature of where this salt came from. And I can tell you another thing. Himalayan salt doesn't necessarily have to follow this. If it's in one area of the Himalayan body, the creature's body, it could have more salt than another area. One could be extremely salty and one could be a lot less salty because of the, well, if it invades the cells, and all cells are sort of invadable if the water comes out, I don't know. There's a lot to think about, but I think you could make, well, there's absolutely no question that the other chemistry in there, like in your liver, is going to be completely different than your kidney or your lung. Totally different chemistry. And pancreas and all that. So it depends on what part of the body was invaded. And we can see for here, this was the ribs. Where is it? Oh, yeah, these are the ribs that got invaded, something like that. That type of connective tissue, similar to this. Now, here's another one, which is bodily tissue. Where is that one? Here it is right here. This is something from layering of the body, and I'm going to show you something else in a second here. What they're doing is they're pulling out the black blood. All right, I think this is the red blood right here. Or they might have sprayed it red so they know to come take it out. Because whenever you have black, the black turns hard. You don't want to be chewing onto that stuff. And I don't know what they're going to use the salt for. They might use it for roads or to eat. But you don't want the black. The black's hard, and it's, anyway, that's what I think they're doing there. Okay, this is outrageously cool. Remember I showed you this right here. And that is the tendon. And this is the gluey part. But this is tough as hell too. This is tough. This is not going to erode like a bone will. This bone will erode right away. But right here, from here down, and over to here, is just as tough as can be. It's just absolutely tough. There's nothing tougher on the planet, basically, that I know of. And then it runs into the muscle, which is not tough. And the muscle bundles eventually just sort of give out, because they've become really weak. But here it is kind of mineralized. You see the white, a lot of white in here. And this is almost all, well, not almost all white, but there's a lot of white. And the rest is still strappy stuff. It doesn't need any blood. This doesn't do any work. It's just a spring. That's all it is. So you don't need to have any blood there to speak of. So when all of this eroded away, and this eroded away, this would be sticking up. And guess what? I can show you that happening. Where do you see this? Don't forget, this is what I'm talking about. The only thing that would be preserved, right in here. And that round ball should be there as well. All right. This is a mind shatterer. There's that ball. All right. There's that really tough strap. These are all the other connective tissue. They're tough too. They're very tough. And this would have been able to go like this and that. The bone would have been right down here. And the gluey stuff has eroded away some of it. This is right here, the abrupt transition where the muscle started and just snapped right here. This is just sticking up in the ocean. Why would that be there? What the hell is that doing there? And guess what they do? They put this label underneath. Millions of years in one picture. No, it's not millions of years in one picture. That's a couple of hours as the thing died. I don't know how long it would take to die, but that's not millions of years, I can tell you that. These creatures were just absolutely, just like they said in the biblical texts, they were so enormous they could reach the skies. And I have no accounting for that. It's just what it is. What it is what it is. And it can't be not what it is, because what it is what it is. So how can it not be what it is if it is what it is? And it is what it is. So that's what it is. All right, this is getting a little long today, so I'm going to probably close this up shortly. But this is about the minerals that are in salt, and those are because there's the minerals that are in your body. Only the salt invaded in some cases. In other cases, it's a complete evacuation, but the salt remained, so it's very salty. And like the salt flats, you see them, they're just white big salt flats. That's not the salt flat. I think that's pretty much skin. Now, this is the pink salt. It's the most alkaline food item on the planet. That's what they say. Now, the right salt in the right amount is actually very good for you, for your health. Pink Himalayan sea salt contains over 84 minerals and trace elements. Sea salt. So they came from the sea is what they're saying. Now, I don't know why they came up with sea salt. It's in the Himalayan mountains. Anyway, Himalayan sea salt contains over 84 minerals and trace elements, 84 minerals, including calcium, magnesium, potassium, copper, iron. So it does more than just make your food taste better. It is also one of the most alkaline substances on the planet. It reduces acid reflux, respiratory problems, improves absorption of nutrients in food. Now, this is where I'm going to go in the next video, because like I say, it's getting kind of long here, and people lose consciousness, lose interest after a while. Now, so I got a lot to go to get into this chemistry of how these salts all occurred and how the Great Flood happened and all of the ancient texts about this, because the Colburn Bible, I think I have either gotten into that or will get into that shortly, is stunning. Absolutely. The things that were written in the ancient texts got to be taken all over, look at them in a whole new light now. If you can discount what I just showed you and think that everything that was written was just silly, well, then I think you're on the silly side. And Velikovsky, like I say, he was the one that went back and found that they all had the same record of this catastrophe here and impact with Mars. They all knew this happened. And there was gods here at that time, and that was only 3,500 years ago. So we got some really thinking to do about everything. For me, it's everything. Now it's everything. I thought it was just going to be a little of this and a little of that, but man, I'll tell you, it just never ends. So again, there's so much in these ancient texts to go over. That's what I think we'll do the next time. And that thing about the Colburn Bible, yikes, that blew my mind.